Windy City Nation, welcome back into another edition of the Windy City Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kesnick. Well, 2019 has been very kind to the Windy City Bulls. The Bulls on a franchise record 8-game winning streak, now in second place in the Central Division at 13-12 behind the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. Bulls grabbed 2 wins last weekend over the Erie Bayhawks and the Stockton Kings. Chicago's own Walt Lemon having a huge weekend for the Bulls, notching 30 points, 7 assists, and 2 rebounds versus the Erie Bayhawks, and 25 points, 9 assists, and 6 boards to lead all scorers in that win over the Kings. Also, if you didn't catch it, unbelievable tip-in at the buzzer by C.J. Fair for that win over the Bayhawks on Friday night was a top 10 SportsCenter play, so make sure to check that out as well. So let's jump right into it. We got a loaded pod for you today. Got a great interview with Windy City Bulls broadcasters Andy Masur and Chris Rouse. We got a lot of listeners out there interested in breaking into the sports broadcasting industry. Andy and Chris have some great insights how they got their break and grew their careers in sports. But first up, I was able to sit down at the halfway point of the season here with Windy City Bulls head coach Charlie Henry. Got some great background from Charlie on how he came to be the Bulls coach, as well as his thoughts on if the Bulls can make a playoff run. We're here with head coach Windy City Bulls, Charlie Henry. Coach, thanks for joining the pod today.
Good to be on.
So holiday season, how'd that go for you? Did you have a chance to break away a little bit with the family?
Yeah, the G League schedule kind of sets up nice in that regard, a little bit different than the NBA. You do get a couple days off at Christmas. So my wife being from Salt Lake, we went there for a couple days right after the showcase. The schedule kind of worked out where obviously we went to Las Vegas, and then with Salt Lake just being being about 5 hours away from there, we went and spent Christmas a couple days, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day with her family. So she was pretty happy about the G League's change in schedule from Toronto to Las Vegas.
Yeah, that works out perfect. Nice little West trip. As far as balancing that coaching life and family life, what advice do you have for those getting into coaching to balance those things out?
Yeah, I can obviously only talk from my own experience, but I, have a unique experience. Obviously, my dad was a longtime high school coach, so around him a lot. Also then around my mom, who, 5 of us, she kind of, carried the load at home as my dad was, off and whatnot coaching. So it definitely takes a special, a special partner, a special wife, and I have that with my wife, Tisha. She's very understanding. We don't have kids yet. It's just, it's me, her, and the dog. So she enjoys it. She teaches obviously during the day, but she enjoys coming to games. She enjoys following us. She's been obviously extremely supportive. Having moved from Salt Lake to Indianapolis to Ames, Iowa, then to Chicago. So she's enjoyed it, and we've enjoyed it together. I will say she had good training. She was Jim Boylan's nanny out in Salt Lake, so he kind of gave her trial by fire, so it's been pretty easy since then.
Yeah, I know how that is. We got a new little one, a new baby girl. My wife's been holding it down while I'm out doing podcasts and such as well, so I can relate to that. So speaking of that, so you started out at Romulus High School in Detroit, and then from there you made the jump out to University of Utah with Coach Boylan. How did that come to pass?
Well, a lot of people don't realize. So I played small college, got done playing, knew I wanted to get into coaching, and I went out and helped out at Romulus High School. Probably doesn't register with a lot of people, but their head coach is Nate Oates, who's now the head coach at the University of Buffalo and has obviously done a tremendous job there. So my 1 year with him was actually really formative because I thought he's one of the best coaches I've worked with. So it was, that was not just stop along the way. That was actually just an incredible experience, seeing the way he ran his program. He had made a connection with Jim while Jim was an assistant at Michigan State. I had also knew a bunch of the guys at Michigan State, and my intent was to get on there as a graduate assistant. But between Nate and Coach Izzo, they brought my name up with Coach Boylan, and I was able to land there. Was obviously very, very excited. Knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to, see if I could get into the professional level. Looking back, probably should have done more as seeking out, internships at the professional level and whatnot. But, and for us, 10, 15 years ago, it was if you want to get into coaching, you go be a graduate assistant in college, and then you go from there. So that was kind of what was always on my mind. So that was, for me, a logical next step. I went and worked for Jim. It was very attractive because not only, obviously, was he a college coach, but, I knew he had spent a lot of years in the NBA, and he had that experience. My 1 year with Jim was great. He's a very good person to work for. Treats his staff like family, very welcoming. We grinded, and I was, obviously the low man on the totem pole. So there's a lot of late nights where, just watching film with him and, just really just picking his brain and learning from him. So, those first 2 years were incredible growth years for me. After Jim got let go at the University of Utah, I was kind of in limbo there for obviously a couple months, as we all were. But as things happened, when Frank Vogel hired him on staff at Indiana, he put in a good word with Frank and Dan Burke, and I was able to land a video internship with the Indiana Pacers. It was during the lockout season. So that was, another year that, I think the experiences you have as a young coach that kind of grow you and develop you are really important in the same way that players need development years. So, those first few years were really, really good for my development.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a pretty quick development for you. Obviously, getting good words in with the guys you're working for. So you're in high school, and then just a couple years later, you're in the NBA. How was that transition for you of dealing with high school players to all of a sudden you're working with pros on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's obviously different, but it's probably more similarities than people think. At Romulus, I mean, we had 7 or 8 Division I kids in the program. And then you obviously transitioned to Utah, that was in the Mountain West, transitioning to the Pac-12. Then you go to the Pacers, and then to Iowa State in the Big 12 with Fred. So to be honest, it's more similar than people think. Like the challenges in coaching, the positives in coaching are the same at most levels. Obviously, the NBA is a little different animal. I think we all understand that. In college, when you're coaching your guys, they need you. Off the floor stuff comes up, all that. The NBA, they don't really need you. So it's a little bit different dynamic there. But as far as like the coaching and teaching side of things, the really good players want to be coached, and they want you to hold them accountable, and they want to know that there's a certain level of competence you bring to your job.
Fast forward till now, your second season, you and your staff have done a tremendous job of developing guys. How much pride do you and your staff take in seeing guys like Ryan Arcidiacono, Antonio Blakeney, seeing the success they've had this year with the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah, we take a lot of pride in it. To me, that's what the G League's all about. So, it feels good when, we're at the showcase and, other people, other teams say a nice word, give a nice word of encouragement about, how guys have developed and gotten better under us. We take a lot of pride in it. And, you mentioned, staff. Obviously, we had Dean Cooper with us the first month, and he was great for us and really great for me personally. He's someone we miss, but we're happy for him. But, down the line, Gennaro Pargo, there's not to me, I don't want to compare him to anyone else, but I feel like I'm incredibly lucky to have him on our staff. His experience as a player, obviously being from Chicago, having played for the Bulls, had some great years for the Bulls. he's someone that can always, tell these guys a message they need at the right time, and they really respect and listen to him. So he's been invaluable to me my 2 years as a coach. We've added a couple guys, Henry Domerkant, just a great spirit about him, incredible energy, brings a lot of life to the locker room, and I know the guys really appreciate it and respect it. Ben Uzo, another former player, he's actually a part of the G League's program to help transition former players in their apprenticeship program, transitioning former players into coaching ranks, and he's brought a great approach to his job. Invested in from day one. He's got an incredibly bright future in coaching, and we brought Ben Sanders, our intern. He's really picked up a lot of the slack since Coop got called up to the big staff. He was in RGV last year, working for obviously Houston's G League affiliate. Has worked a few different places in college, but he's really good as well, and he's more than capable. I mean, his title's an intern, but with Coop gone, he's really served as another assistant coach.
I've asked a few of the players about this in some past podcasts, but I wanted to get your perspective as well. The new professional path rule, as far as guys being able to come straight from high school, how do you think that's going to impact G League rosters going forward, how they're built, and how they're developed?
It's kind of one of those things I'm just going to have to see it to find out. Having been on the college side of things, I think it's going to have to take a special 18-year-old to make that jump. I don't know if a lot of people that don't follow it as closely as, obviously I live it now, but I don't think a lot of people realize how good the G League is and the level of play, and high level Division I is good basketball, but this is a different level. And every game there's with the two-way contracts, assignment players, it's just a really high level game. And when you're 18, 19 years old, obviously there's that, there's those rare ones that come along that will be ready and would thrive. But for many of them, it's going to be a really, really interesting transition to watch and to see how it happens. I want to give respect to how good the players in the G League are. And, the CJ Ferrers on our team, the Walt Lemons, those guys are really, really, really good players. And integrating 18-year-olds, obviously we're looking for special 18, 19-year-olds. But like I said, I'm sure it was similar to the two-way deal. It's just kind of one of those things we're going to have to experience it to really understand all the layers of it.
Speaking of high level, last night, incredible tip in by CJ at the buzzer. Gets you guys a win over Erie and franchise record. 7-game winning streak going on back in the playoff hunt. What have you seen from the development of the team this year that's really progressed well at the halfway point and gives you some good positive thoughts going into the second half?
Well, obviously, we came out the gate a little slow. A variety of reasons, some of them are out of our control. But I did think, from day one we established an identity where we were going to be really tough and gritty and compete. I mean, you've seen us top 5 in defense here for the last, long time. So, even when we were struggling, I didn't think we were as far away as maybe others thought. Like I said, from day one, we've had a group that's been bought in to play in and giving the effort really needed, at both ends, but especially defensively. That 5-12 start. I mean, we won a few games just off, our toughness and our defensive edge. And then, you've seen us over the last month or so, since we've added Walt Lemon. Now our offense has grown, and his unique ability to play downhill, create good shots for his teammates. We've really thrived once we've added that element, and now you've seen our offense get a lot better. And for the most part, we've kept our defense where it needs to be. Obviously, we've had yesterday being against a really, really good offensive team in Erie. But, the ability to win playing, 2-3 different ways, you got to be able to win those games sometimes, just like you got to be able to win. We've won some games, in the 90s, and to me it's, you got to be able to do it 2 or 3 different ways, and I think we have that now.
We were talking about that before. You guys were featured on SportsCenter, that your starters last night had an average age higher than Chicago Bulls starters last night. So you're seeing that maturity and you're seeing that fire to make a playoff run?
Yeah, I definitely am. I love coaching our young guys too. We got a lot of rookies that are fresh out of college. Kaiser Gates, Dikembe Dixon, Thomas Wilder, just some examples there. But I like having the mix that we have, because we have some older guys that have done it, and they really take the mentoring side of things. They really embrace their role on the team with the younger guys, and it's been great. A guy like Farrakhan Hall, he's been unbelievable for the young guys. Just a really calming, veteran presence, voice. Obviously, he's experienced a lot of different things, since he left college, played in a lot of different places. So he's a really calming influence in the locker room, and I like having the mix.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck tonight.
Definitely.
A big thanks to Coach for joining the podcast. Coach Henry and his staff, huge assets to the Bulls organization in developing that roster depth the Bulls need for the future. Next up, had a great conversation with Bulls sideline reporter and radio play-by-play man Andy Masur, as well as TV color commentator Chris Rouse. Just talk about how they came up in the sports broadcasting industry, as well as who their favorite sportscasters are, both past and present. Andy Masur and Chris Rouse, 2 regulars on the Windy City Hoops podcast. Friends of the pod, as they say. Guys, thanks for taking the time out of your game day.
Absolutely. Thanks for the long walk. Appreciate it.
Anytime. So I want to change up a little bit with you guys. We got a lot of listeners out there interested in getting into the sports broadcasting industry. So I want to get some thoughts from you both, just on how your careers started, the work you put in to grow them. Andy, as a vet in the industry, some would say jack of all trades. And Chris with a very successful start to his career. So most of us, we knew at a young age we wanted to be in sports. We wanted to be in this industry. What were the moments growing up when you knew you wanted to be in sports broadcasting?
Well, if you ask my parents, and I, again, only have them to go with on this because I was only 2.5 years old, but they told me that I used to walk around the house with an old cassette microphone cord, not even attached to anything, and walking around trying to interview people. My grandparents would run away when they would come into the house because I was trying to imitate Jack Brickhouse, who was a guy that my dad and I would watch all the time, and I was so impressed with the way he always did such off-the-cuff and in-depth types of interviews that it was just amazing to watch. And I kind of got bitten by that bug really, really early, and then was fortunate enough to have a radio station at my high school growing up, and at Maine East in Park Ridge, and was able to kind of follow the sports thing there. I did some play-by-play of basketball. We turned on our cable station there, so I did a simulcast broadcast of a basketball game, first one in Maine Township high school history, which I find that and $2.50 gets me Starbucks these days. But it was kind of cool. And then off to Bradley. Didn't do a whole lot there because it was not really known as a communication school back then. But I had to make my own breaks. Sent out a lot of resumes to do internships. Finally got a couple of those. Got on the air, and that's the biggest thing. I mean, I didn't start in sports. To be honest with you, my first full-time job in radio was an overnight DJ, Top 40 in Peoria, for $13,800 a year, which was a lot of money back in 1991 or 92, whenever that was. But I always tell people, get on the air. You got to get on the air because you need to have tape. You need to be taken seriously. You need to have that clip of you actually doing a show that is being heard by people, and you get taken much more seriously. And I knew I wanted to get back into sports, and I had to really work my rear end off because I'd kind of gotten off my track a little bit. But with that experience, I was able to parlay it and get back into sports, and eventually do sports updates and do some sports hosting, and then into where I really wanted to be, which was play-by-play. And fortunately for me, you got to do it at a high level for quite a few years.
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot, where you have to start out maybe not quite in the sports realm yet, getting your broadcasting chops until you be able to shift over into that sports realm. Chris, what about you?
Well, for me, I'm sort of still starting my career out. I'm still in this phase where it's like I'm kind of known, but not really known enough. Say like an Andy Mazur, like people, he's very recognizable, sort of like a legend around here. But as far as getting my start, I mean, I've always loved sports, even when I was a kid. And I knew I liked broadcasting when I was younger, back when I had the Sega Genesis, NBA Live 96. See, a lot of people don't realize now with a lot of the video games now they got commentators in them. Back then they didn't have commentators, and I don't like playing games in silence, so I would commentate the game. So I would try to imitate like Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. I tried to do both. I'd be the play-by-play and the color guy. So yeah, I would do that while playing the game. I went to college. I went to the University of Illinois for 5 years. I didn't really get into broadcasting there because I ain't gonna lie, I had a bad start. And I was trying to catch up and make sure I got my degree. So I had to, take my cuts. I had to cut my losses. I was working at Applebee's. I was working at Best Buy. And actually, I was working at Best Buy doing overnights in the warehouse one time. And I heard an ad for the Illinois Media School. And I said, it might be a scam, but I'd still check it out. So I checked it out, and then I ended up getting here with the Windy City Bulls as a student. And I took this serious because I was 25 when I started Illinois Media School, but I was thinking, hey, this might be it. This might be my last chance to really break in where I want to do what I want to do. And I know, you got your whole life ahead of you, but for me, I looked at it like it was a last chance. I just know I didn't want to work at Best Buy no more. So once I ended up getting laid off there. So I had all the time in the world to try to find jobs, and I started doing high school sports. I got hired by the media school, so after paying them my tuition money, they're paying me now to work for them. So it's sort of like I recouped my money. So it's just, I'm just grinding, just out here trying to find my niche in the world where I can live comfortably off of what I do, because right now I'm still, bouncing around.
Yeah, it can absolutely take different paths. You've got multiple ways. If you're getting a late start in it, doesn't necessarily mean it can't happen. If you get an early start, that's great too, but there are a lot of different paths that happen for multiple people.
The one thing that I want to point out that Chris mentioned, and it's something that you don't see a lot of. He's grinding. I love that word, and I love the fact that he was taking it seriously, because you find some students will come in and automatically think, well, I've done it on Sega Genesis, I can do it here. Right. And you know what? You just say, okay, try it, go for it, and let them stumble and find out they can't do it, because there's a lot that goes into it that they don't really realize at this point, which is it's one of the things I've encountered so far instructing, especially during the play-by-play sessions, something that I'm really familiar with and very adept with. And again, I don't know everything. I still evolve with with certain calls and things of that nature, but at the same time, there are a few people that are born to do it. They have that natural talent, they have the natural ability, they have the natural sound, but they're very few and far between. Students that come in now need to have that attitude of, listen, I am a lump of clay, mold me and get me better, and I'm never going to be perfect. I need to continue to work. There are a lot of things that I really feel like I still need to work on, especially when it comes to basketball. I've been out of practice a little bit. And it is like riding a bike for someone who's done it a long time, but it does take time to get back into it. So you have to have that attitude that you're not going to succeed right away. You hope you do, and I hope you do, but chances are you're not. So Chris having that backup plan, I had some backup plans. I didn't allow myself to really think about them because I never wanted to get there. I never wanted to go back to that situation where I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. So the mindset is really important. It's really important when you come in. You can be confident. Don't be cocky, and be approachable, and be moldable a little bit, because you're going to need to figure out how to do this professionally and well.
Definitely. So you guys mentioned some of the greats, though. Jack Brickhouse, mentioned Marv Albert. Who are some of the guys or girls that you can recommend? You can watch anything on YouTube right now. You can check out some old recordings, older games, or new guys that are in the game right now. Who would you guys recommend taking a look at to really hone the craft?
Well, I'm old school and sort of new school as well. But basketball-wise, radio. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he was the guy that I listened to growing up, and that was Jim Durham, who did the Bulls games for many, many years, then moved over to ESPN, and then was eventually with the Dallas Mavericks. And unfortunately, several years ago, passed away from a heart attack. And this guy could call a basketball game, I think, with his eyes closed. He was authoritative. He was descriptive. He was excitable. You knew exactly which team broadcast you were listening to, but it wasn't so over the top that it was obnoxious. Just a solid professional kind of a broadcast to me, which was something that I still use a couple of his terms because I liked him so much. Foul line extended left, foul line extended right. I heard that for the first time with him, and I'm thinking, man, that's a really good way to describe where he is on the floor. And, kind of took that and incorporated it into my vernacular as well. So that's my old school guy as far as basketball is concerned. New school, there's a lot of guys that are doing, really good things. And I think Brian Anderson, to me, is a friend and a great baseball announcer. Has done a lot of great things with basketball on television as well. Very excitable, very enthusiastic, very knowledgeable. These guys work their tails off. And that's kind of goes back to what I was saying. I mean, they don't just walk into an arena and expect that their prep work's going to be done for them. They're doing their prep work. They're doing everything themselves. They maybe have some more advantages to access and, getting the big names to talk to them a little bit because of where they are in their careers and what networks they work for. But at the same time, at the end of the day, when you sit down at that table or you sit down in that booth and you're behind the microphone, you better have prepped because people are going to sniff it out right away, and you're going to be found out very, very quickly.
Well, Dynasty Night coming up here tonight at the Sears Center Arena. So Jim Durham, definitely a good throwback name to those Dynasty era Bulls. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, Jim Durham, definitely one of my favorites. I always remember him, Jordan in from the right side and stuff like that. Exactly, all that type of stuff. So, yeah, Jim Durham was one of my favorites. I mentioned Marv Albert. I mean, I used to look up to Marv because of NBA on NBC on Sundays. Used to be my favorite time of the year when those games start coming on. Kevin Harlan is a guy that I really like, mainly because I hear him on 2K all the time. Another one of my favorites is Ian Eagle. Ian Eagle, I really like him, especially because just like Kevin Harlan, he's very versatile. You'll hear him doing football on CBS, and you'll have him doing basketball. I want to say he does it for the Nets, and I watch it. I'll catch the Nets on League Pass. Right. So yeah, I like Ian Eagle. I like Kevin Harlan. Another guy that I really like that I think is still sort of like coming up. He's kind of known now is Brandon Garden. He just did a game for the Bulls against the Wizards. I want to say last week when they were at Washington. He's on Madden now, so his name has really grown in my mind because I feel like when you get on a video game, it kind of allows you to show your skills because that's not exactly easy because you're doing that. You're recording lines as opposed to just calling what you're seeing. So I really like Brandon Garden. I really like Kevin Harlan, Ian Eagle, Marv. Like I said, one of the guys I looked up to, Jim Durham. Dick Enberg, he passed away. He was another one of my favorites.
Legend.
So pretty much all those guys on NBA on NBC, those were my favorites because I used to hear them all the time.
I make me feel old because I actually worked with Dick Enberg for several years in San Diego. But yeah, I mean, there are certain guys that you tune in and you know that it's a big game. I'm a big hockey guy, and I got to throw this out there because I just had an opportunity to do it, to spend about 25, 30 minutes with Doc Emmerich, who couldn't be any nicer than he sounds on TV. And the vocabulary of that guy and the excitement from that guy. And he's like 70 years old, and he just keeps going and keeps grinding. And he's one of those guys when you tune into an NHL game and he's doing it, it's a big game. And the same thing with Dick Enberg and back in the day Brent Musburger. Those were the guys that you tuned into a game on CBS or NBC and you heard their voice and you're like, okay, this is an all-star game or a playoff game or something huge because these guys are doing a game.
Yeah, and another one, Bob Costas. I actually like Bob Costas. A lot of people didn't like Bob Costas when he did play-by-play, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed Bob Costas when he was play-by-play on NBC.
Bob was great, yeah. All those NBC guys, Marv, definitely Doc Emmerich. I mean, when you're calling hockey at that level that he does, that's one of the most impressive skills you can have. So, as you guys, again, we're building your careers, what was really your break to get you to that next level?
Well, let's see. For me, I was in Peoria after Bradley and worked there for about 6 years or so and decided I was going to come back to Chicago. And I went to work for an outfit that was based in the Merchandise Mart that did traffic reports and news reports and sports reports for several different stations in Chicago. And the sports director there happened to be a guy by the name of Jeff Joniak, who is now doing the radio call for the Bears on their radio station, which is in direct conflict with mine, so I will not mention the call letters. Just kidding. He's at BBM doing the games there, and he was a sports director, and I walked up to him, I'll never forget, in the hallway and said, hey, listen, I introduced myself, and I said, I've been doing traffic on the station. I would love the chance to do some sports. It's in my blood. I don't have a lot of practical experience. And he said, okay. He says, here's the deal. And he was trying to weed me out, which was actually a great lesson because I ended up going to work for him. He said, I want a cassette tape from you, 1 cassette tape a week, doing sports updates, and try to incorporate some sound bites into it, and blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, great. So he should have known better than to challenge me, because when you challenge me, you get more than you really bargained for. Because not only was I giving him 1 tape a week, I was giving him 4. And was giving him a hard time for not catching up to the work that I was providing for him. And finally, he said mercy and gave me a shift on BBM, a night shift on a Sunday as a kind of a tryout. And it worked to my benefit. I was working 7 days a week for about 5 years. I was doing my traffic duties during the week, and then I was working at the old WMAQ, which is 670, where the score is now. I was doing weekend anchor shifts there. And that led into work at the national network that I worked for, and then eventually to my first trip to WGN, eventually into the Cubs booth, to the Padres booth, and then back here. So, I mean, I look at that as a real significant time in my career. And Joniak is still a very a good friend and a confidant of mine, that when I have a tough decision to make, he's one of the first people that I call.
As far as for me, I would say I'm still sort of waiting on my break. I'm still working at it. I'm still making a name for myself. But as far as probably my biggest break, as far as anything I've done, Windy City definitely. Windy City Bulls definitely the thing that has been the biggest thing that I've done so far. I mean, I've done a few college games here and there for Chicago State, University of Chicago. I've been a PA announcer for the Bloomington Edge indoor football team. I worked with the Chicago Dogs independent baseball team. And I did some high school football in Indiana. That was probably my first actual job that I got paid for in the industry, and that was all through the Illinois Media School. So if anything, I would have to say Illinois Media School has definitely helped me get on the right path so far in my career.
And that's what it's all about, taking those opportunities where you get them and capitalizing on them when you get them. So that takes me to this year with Windy City. Just wanted to cover that a little bit. How's your experience been just getting to know the G League? What do you think is special about this league, and what have you enjoyed most about covering the team?
It definitely keeps you on your toes, because every time you get here, the roster is different. You get to know a guy and he's gone, and you hope it's for a good reason. Not that he was released or anything like that, but that he's getting an opportunity to play in the league. It's interesting, just the style of play, watching what certain guys are working on, what certain guys are adept at. And, it's just interesting to watch how guys that are on the same team are basically competing against each other for spots on other teams or on the NBA team, and they find a way to put all that aside and play the game that they love. And it's also really cool to get to know some of the the coaches in this league. Charlie Henry here is one of the more patient individuals, I would say, because we put him through the ringer last year with some students going in there and asking him pregame questions that weren't the greatest, but we all asked stupid questions when we were growing through it. But the respect factor that I have for him now, just watching him handle that and go through it, knowing that he's got a game to coach, is very admirable. So these are real down-to-earth people. The management team here, the PR people, to the president. I mean, I watched the president, Brad Seymour, literally on a ladder changing the nets in this arena one day, and I took a picture of him, and he kind of looked at me like, "What are you taking a picture of me for?" I said, we have a hard time motivating students who are not anything more than first year at IMS, who won't do certain things because they feel like it's beneath them. I'm showing them that you are the team freaking president of this organization, and you're on a ladder 4 hours before a game changing out the nets. If you can do that, they can pull cable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like the G League because, one, I love basketball anyway, so any type of basketball, I'm going to enjoy it. But I really like the G League because I feel like I can relate to the players because, like I said, I'm trying to make a name for myself, much the same. They're trying to make a name for themselves on the floor. And, of course, I love it because I'm on TV. I get to tell my mom, hey, Mom, watch me on television and stuff like that. So it's a chance for me to show off for my mother and some of my loved ones. So I really love the G League. It's fun. It's fun basketball. And like Andy said, it definitely keeps you on your toes. It will separate the real from the fake because it separates who's willing to work to stay prepared for their broadcast and who's willing to be up to date with the league because it's a fast-moving league. You got players going up, players going down, players going to China, players just saying, hey, you know what, I don't want to play in the G League, I'm out. So you have to be on your toes. You have to be willing to work in order to be successful in the G League.
Guys, thanks for joining us today. Look out for these two, Andy Masur and Chris Rouse, on the broadcast for the Windy City Bulls on NBC Sports Chicago and ESPN+. Thanks, guys. Thanks again to Chris and Andy. And want to send a huge thanks to everyone out there listening and supporting the Windy City Hoops podcast. You can now find the pod on YouTube as well as SoundCloud, and we may be having some new channels opening up soon too. So again, a huge thanks for the support out there. Windy City Bulls on an 8-game winning streak, franchise record 8-game winning streak. They're in town as well this weekend, Friday night, 7 p.m. The Bulls will be taking on the Wisconsin Herd in the Johnsonville border battle. Then back-to-back nights, they'll be at the Sears Center Arena again on Saturday night for Deaf Awareness Night. First 1,500 fans will receive a Gus and Benny the Bull bobblehead. To grab your tickets today, go to windycitybulls.com/tickets or call 847-396-7070. That'll about do it for this edition of the Windy City Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Joe Kesnick. Until next time, go Bulls.